Imagine living in a world where a single flower could determine your social status, your wealth, even your survival. The year is 1636, in the bustling cities of Holland. The streets are alive with merchants, artists, and sailors returning from distant lands, carrying treasures and tailies of exotic spices, silks, and most shockingly rare flowers called tulips. At first glance, tulips were merely beautiful flowers. Their vibrant colors and delicate petals made them a symbol of sophistication, a luxury for the wealthy elite. But soon, these flowers became more than decoration. They became money, power, and obsession wrapped in petals. People from all walks of life were swept into a frenzy that would come to be known as Tulip Mania. By 1637, a single tulip could fetch the price of a luxurious house. And as the frenzy grew, ordinary citizens made impossible decisions. They sold homes, borrowed heavily, and risked everything for a flower that seemed to promise untold riches. But what happens when a bubble like this bursts? The answer is both tragic and fascinating, a timeless lesson in human psychology, greed, and the unpredictable nature of markets. To understand tulip mania, we need to step back into 17th century Holland. This was the Dutch Golden Age, a period of immense economic prosperity. Cities like Amsterdam were global trade hubs, teeming with merchants, shipbuilders, and financiers. Wealth flowed through the canals as easily as the water itself, and people had disposable income to indulge in luxuries that previous generations could scarcely imagine. Among these luxuries, tulips began to captivate the elite. Tulips were imported from the Ottoman Empire, their rare colors and intricate patterns creating a feverish demand. Some varieties were so unique that they were almost mythical. Stories spread of tulips that had never been seen before, and owning them became a status symbol. In a society obsessed with prestige and appearances, the tulip was the perfect obsession. Psychologically, the Dutch were primed for speculation. Years of trade success had created confidence and, in many cases, overconfidence. People were fascinated by rarity and willing to pay exorbitant prices for anything perceived as scarce. This combination of wealth, ambition, and human nature set the stage for an extraordinary economic experiment. Initially, tulips were merely ornamental. Wealthy households would display them in windows or gardens, signaling taste and social standing. However, as demand grew, so did the prices. Merchants noticed that some tulips were selling for more than the cost of ordinary commodities, and they began trading them as luxury goods. By the early 1630s, tulip trading had moved beyond gardens and into a more formalized market. Contracts were drawn, agreements were made to buy tulips at future dates, and a kind of futures market emerged. People who had never grown a tulip themselves began investing in flowers they had never seen, speculating purely on potential value. In small towns and cities across Holland, stories circulated of traders making hundreds of guilders from a single rare tulip. Ordinary citizens, seeing neighbors profit, were drawn in. It wasn't just about beauty anymore. It was about opportunity, greed, and the thrill of taking a risk. By 1636, the tulip market had entered a frenzy. Prices were soaring at rates that would seem absurd today. For example, the Semper Augustus, one of the rarest tulip varieties, could cost 10 times the annual income of a skilled artisan. Ordinary tulips were selling for hundreds of guilders, but the rarest ones reached the equivalent of mansions, farms, or entire livelihoods. Merchants, craftsmen, and even peasants joined the craze. Families mortgaged homes to buy tulips, taking out loans from banks and neighbors. Some people traded multiple times a day, hoping to sell at ever higher prices. Public squares buzzed with excitement as buyers and sellers shouted bids over the crowd, trading contracts instead of actual flowers. Fictionalized characters help illustrate the frenzy. Jan, a shipbuilder, sells half his workshop to invest in Semper Augustus bulbs, dreaming of instant wealth. Margaret, a seamstress, borrows from neighbors to buy a rare tulip, hoping to secure a future for her children. Hendrik, a seasoned merchant, warns his peers about irrational prices, but is ignored, becoming a voice of reason, drowned out by speculation. The social fabric was affected as well. Jealousy and envy grew, as neighbors compared who had the rarest tulips. Pride and fear of missing out fueled the frenzy, making rational decisions nearly impossible. At the height of Tulip Mania, the market reached unimaginable extremes. Reports from Amsterdam described contracts for a single tulip exceeding the price of luxury houses or estates. Imagine buying a flower for more than the cost of your home, or trading multiple contracts daily in the hope of making a fortune overnight. Merchants, nobles, and even common citizens engaged in speculative bets, often without ever seeing the flower they purchased. Prices were dictated not by beauty or rarity alone, but by psychology-herd behavior, fear, and greed. Illustrative moments. A contract for a tulip sells for 5,000 guilders, enough to feed a family of 10 for decades. Entire households borrow against future earnings to invest in flowers they cannot even touch. Stories circulate of traders sleeping in public squares to secure contracts during auctions. At this peak, the line between reality and illusion blurred. People believed in eternal price rises, ignoring the risk that markets might collapse. Inevitably, the market could not sustain itself. In February 1637, buyers suddenly disappeared. Prices fell dramatically within days. Panic selling spread across cities. Contracts became worthless. Jan, the shipbuilder, lost everything he had invested. His workshop was gone, and his dreams of wealth evaporated. Margaret, the seamstress, had to sell her modest home to cover debts, facing humiliation and poverty. Hendrik, the cautious merchant, watched with grim satisfaction as the folly unfolded, but the city's economy trembled nonetheless. The collapse was swift and brutal. People realized too late that the flowers were never worth what they had imagined. Families were ruined, fortunes vanished, and a society that had celebrated the tulip's beauty now mourned its cost. Yet not all stories ended in disaster. A few savvy investors who sold early profited enormously, illustrating a timeless lesson. Timing and rationality can preserve wealth even amidst mania. Tulip Mania offers several enduring lessons for modern investors. Human psychology matters. Greed, envy, and fear drive markets just as much as supply and demand. Speculation can outpace reality. Assets often rise in price, not because of intrinsic value, but because everyone believes they will continue to rise. Diversify and manage risk. Those who bet everything on a single tulip lost everything. Spreading risk across assets can prevent disaster. Timing is crucial. Selling too late can be catastrophic. Selling too early may feel like missed opportunity, but it preserves capital. Markets are cyclical. Tulip Mania foreshadows modern bubbles.com, housing, cryptocurrency. Human behavior remains surprisingly consistent. Today, Tulip Mania is remembered as the first recorded speculative bubble, a story told in economics classes worldwide. Historians and financial analysts study it not just for its drama, but for its lessons about human behavior and market psychology. Rare tulip bulbs still exist in museums, symbolic of fleeting wealth and obsession. Modern comparisons are inevitable. .com booms, stock market crazes, crypto surges. The names change, but the behavior is eerily similar. Tulip Mania reminds us that markets are as much about people as about money. Greed, fear, envy, and hope shape economies as much as laws or banks ever could. In the end, Tulip Mania is more than a story about flowers. It is a cautionary tale about human nature, ambition, and the delicate dance between wealth and obsession. So next time you see a rare collectible, a volatile stock, or a hyped-up crypto coin, remember the Dutch merchants of 1637. One flower beautiful, coveted, and fleeting changed lives forever. Some got rich, some lost everything. And through it all, the lesson remains timeless. Invest with caution, think critically, and never let obsession cloud judgment. Learn from these historical financial experiences and avoid making the same mistakes in your own investments. Don't forget to subscribe and like to stay updated on our new videos.